So we've seen the replay of what happened with Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills plenty of times today, and I'm sure you've seen it as well. Just from your perspective, what happened last night with Hamlin?
Yeah, so we don't know exactly. His medical team hasn't released any detailed statement about, exactly what they've deduced from, examining him in the hospital. But we can assume that he was in good, perfect health going into this event. NFL players undergo a lot of detailed cardiac screening before they're allowed to play competitively. And so the best guess that anyone can approximate right now is that he suffered from this condition called commotio cordis, where basically a sudden large blow to the chest actually generates enough electrical activity in the chest to interfere with the heart's normal rhythm. And it can send you into something called cardiac arrest, where your heart's basically not beating. And that required the team doctors to perform CPR. And after a few minutes, it looks like they were able to shock his heart back into normal rhythm.
Dr. Christopher Kelly is a cardiologist with the North Carolina Heart and Vascular at UNC Health Rex, joining us here on the OG. That's Joe Ovies. I'm Joe Gilgio. Dr. Kelly, well, I'm curious. You mentioned the defibrillator and the CPR. What is the success rate for the defibrillator use? Like, how lucky is Damar Hamlin right now?
Yeah, well, to the extent that anyone could call him lucky, he's lucky that this happened in a place where medical professionals were able to get to him within seconds. So generally speaking, when somebody has a cardiac arrest, they don't do so well. But that's usually because people who have cardiac arrests have other medical problems. They tend to be older, and it tends to happen in a place where, an ambulance has to come and there's some delay before they get medical care. Because he's young and presumably in excellent health up until this moment, and they got to him within seconds, he has a reasonably good chance of having a good outcome. But it may take days, weeks, even months before he really makes a recovery back to normal.
Dr. Kelly, one thing I noticed was this was a football play. We've talked a lot about concussions, and you see guys get hit in the head. You see, one defender hold somebody up, but then a second guy comes in, and you're concerned. This was just a football play, and I know it's hard to deduce some of these odds without knowing all of the details. But is this a 1 in a million? Is this a 1 in a billion hit? Like, what are the odds that something like this actually happens?
I mean, it's super rare. I'm not aware of it having occurred in the NFL previously. It does happen. Football is actually not the main sport in which something like this happens. It's actually more common in like baseball,
Yeah.
martial arts, hockey, where like a projectile or a fist, is going to hit your chest with a reasonably high likelihood. In football, it's a lot less common because, not only do you have to get a blow to the chest, it has to be at just the wrong time in your heart's normal electrical cycle to allow it to put you into cardiac arrest. So it's really like a super fluke event. And, football is a very dangerous sport, but this is not typically one of the reasons why we would say that.
Dr. Christopher Kelly, cardiologist, UNC Rex, joining us here on the OG alongside Joe Gilgio. I'm Joe Ovies. We appreciate your time today to discuss this because we are not doctors. This is one of those things where we can sit here and speculate, but we are not doctors. You are. And I'm curious, you talked about the recovery. Everybody's different, okay? So, and he's in critical condition right now. How do you recover from this? What is the typical recovery time for something like this? In other words, is what's happening right now with Hamlin normal, like in terms of his current condition and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's still in the hospital, still listed in critical condition is very much expected, and it doesn't mean at all that he won't have a good outcome in the future. From basically the moment that he collapsed until the moment that they shocked his heart, his brain, kidneys, and other vital organs were receiving very minimal, if any, blood flow. In fact, before they start CPR, they're receiving no blood flow. And once they start CPR, they're receiving like, a little less than 10% of the normal amount of blood flow that the heart delivers, which obviously is better than nothing. And so during that time period, before his heart could be shocked into normal rhythm, his organs were not getting blood. So that means they were dying. And, thankfully in young people, we often find that they can survive something like that and they can go back to their previous, level of normal function. Whether he'll play professional sports is a separate question, but he may live a relatively normal life if he survives this. But it can take a few days, for the brain to wake up. It can take a few days for us to have a really clear sense of whether somebody is likely to wake up. And so, I wouldn't read too much into the fact that he still, has a breathing tube in the hospital. I give it another week before we start to really worry about his chances of recovering.
Dr. Christopher Kelly joining us. Appreciate you, man, taking some time. I know we've never talked before, but
Yeah,
Alan Wolf was kind enough to hook us up with you, and Alan does such a great job over at UNC Health
I'm
Rex.
sorry to be.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry to be talking about the sad subject.
I know, but it's amazing to hear the information about your organs, about your brain. Like you're sitting here thinking about it, and you're going, "What the heck? How did it? Whoever invented the defibrillator? Thank you." Like that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I hope that people, listening to this, I think the takeaway from this is not that you should be worried about suddenly collapsing from cardiac arrest on the football field. Again, that's a rare event, and there's other things during football that you should worry more about. But I hope that people see what happened and realize how important it is to learn CPR. And, if somebody goes down in front of you, whether it's at, the park or church or, school, that you can get in there and do life-saving interventions that in this case, literally saved his life. In addition, have a vague idea of what defibrillators are. They're all over the place in airports, banks, large office buildings, some restaurants. It doesn't require much to use one. You just take it out of that box on the wall, turn it on, and it tells you what to do. And that also can be incredibly important and life-saving. So hopefully people will pay attention to that and pick up a few skills that aren't that hard to learn and can save someone's life.
Dr. Christopher Kelly, cardiologist, UNC Rex. We appreciate the time, taking some time in your day to educate us on all of these things and just, yes, the freakish nature, and as you said, relatively lucky. We use that term kind of loosely here, but that all those things played out and he's still with us. Dr. Christopher Kelly, we appreciate the time. Take it easy.
Thanks. Have a great day, guys.